Welcome to Rewiring Health, where you'll find a combination of science and spirituality to reclaim your health and realize your worth. I'm your host, Kelly Kessler, and I'm on a mission to help you stop self-abandoning and start embracing yourself. Join me as we dive into heart-centered, authentic conversations that not only will inspire you, but help you unlock a whole new perspective. You are here for a reason. Now let's dive in. I am so incredibly honored to have Baba Sam Shelley on the podcast today. He is known as the Miracle Man. After being diagnosed with 7 different conditions, one of them being MS, and taking 13 daily medications and struggling to walk, he shares how he was ruminating on negativity, thinking that his thoughts were his truth, and feeling like he was on an hopeless battle of living with these conditions for the rest of his life. However, he shares his story of how he has healed from the inside out, and it is absolutely incredible. Today, Baba is free from disease and disability, and he assists others in going beyond their limiting beliefs and allowing them to reconnect with their vibrant souls, guiding them back to their natural state, to a place where miracles occur. He is the founder of Vibrant Soul Society and has appeared on numerous podcasts, TV shows, and is the author of 2 books. I truly enjoyed this conversation, and it will leave you feeling so empowered in your own journey to recognize how much capacity you have to take control of your own health and live the life that you truly desire. Well, welcome, Baba, to the podcast. I can't wait to have this conversation with you, and just thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, Kelly, thank you for having me and thank you for listening, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you are known as the Miracle Man, and I would love for you to share your story and what brought you to where you are today, because we chatted a little bit a few weeks ago on your podcast, and I just found your story so profound, but I've only heard parts of it. So I would love for you to share your full story and really what brought you to who you serve today.
Yeah, so the full story would take hours, so we'll shorten it down a little bit. But basically, I was hit by a van at age 6, which caused a lot of damage, broken elbow, broken hip, a lot of head trauma, a lot of these type of conditions. And what they've seen now, today's studies with MRIs and stuff, that head trauma at significant age leads into bipolar. They didn't know that at the time. So I was going through, high school as an undiagnosed bipolar. So that was quite the adventure. And there was really no help coming for me. They didn't know what to do with me in high school. One time I was really acting up. So they said, go see the principal. The principal asked if I was smoking marijuana. I said no. And he sent me back to class. That was it. There was really no help coming. So then it was into my 20s when I was very suicidal and had all these harmful thoughts. I was finally diagnosed with bipolar, but they did all the testing beforehand to make sure that there was no significant mental, brain anomalies and things of that with the MRIs and all that stuff. So this doctor talked to me for about 2.5 hours. I never had a doctor talk to me for this long, 2.5 hours, trying to understand my life and what was going on. So he's the one that diagnosed me with bipolar. And it took about 5 years for him to stabilize the bipolar. So I was really like all over the place. And I have all sorts of interesting stories about that time frame. During that time frame, I was actually interviewed by Brad Pitt, who was role playing for a character. So for the 12 movies, for the movie 12 Monkeys, he interviewed me for that. So it was my kind of fun days with the bipolar, but it was a crazy life. But I was really stressed, really overwhelmed with life. So then I was dealing with, chronic migraines because I was always stressed really in that state. And when you're really stressed, overwhelmed, I had this psoriasis, so that itchy skin rash on about a third of my body, and that got into my joints. I had psoriatic arthritis. Then I was just continuing these health journeys. To me, it was just a medical system. I was completely enthralled in the medical system, like a lot of people are. So I always thought the doctors knew what was best for me. So this journey continued for a while. I was getting sicker and sicker. Then eventually, I had the worst migraine at my life at age 37. So I called my migraine doctor, my neurologist, and he said, well, it's probably a migraine, a really severe one. I'll see you on Monday. I'll call something else in so it's a little stronger, give you some relief. Well, my wife knew that something was really wrong with me. It wasn't normal at all. So I went to the ER. They checked me for a stroke, but no stroke. So I went to see that doctor on Monday. By that time, it was getting very difficult to walk. So I did the emergency MRI, got the results, then I was admitted to the hospital on a Wednesday. So I went from the worst migraine of my life to by Wednesday, Thursday, I couldn't walk anymore. I couldn't see. I had all these type of issues. And it was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. But MS is one of those diseases where it's a process of elimination. So I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, testing me for everything, and they were just testing me for everything. All these tests they were running. Then after about 2, 3 weeks, they concluded that it was multiple sclerosis. Then they just sent me to rehab from there. So that was my life, basically, from the car accident to the age of 37, losing the ability to walk. Then I lived with MS for 7 years and all these conditions. So by the time I was 40, I had about 7 different diagnoses. I was taking 13 daily medications, and I didn't know anything outside there. I thought this was my lot in life, and I was just going to be sick. So I always had this incurable story. And eventually I got myself out of that incurable story, and we can get into that later. But what this was for me was, and I see a lot of people are locked into this as well, that medicine is the way to go, that we go to these doctors, we take these pills, but there's no sense of a cure. There's no sense of getting better. It's always treating symptoms to try to get you to function better. But I wasn't functioning better at all. I was actually in this constant decline of my health. And it wasn't until something in my life turned it around that it was really about this. So before I continue, let's see if you have any questions before I dive more into this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so much I want to unpack there just with everything you shared and going through one thing after another and then accumulating these conditions and then the medications. And then, really, what you said will resonate with so many people, relying outside yourself on someone to know better than what you know about your own body and kind of like relinquishing your power somewhat along the way of just feeling like you're susceptible to what you were experiencing. How did you start to create that sense of empowerment within yourself and realizing like this doesn't have to be your identity, that you talked about being the person that had these incurable things and this is just who you are and what you're going to have to live with. How did that identity shift start to change as you went through that?
Yeah, so my story is a little different. I never had any concept of healing myself. I was never on a healing journey, as
Mhm.
typical people say. It's like, I'm tired of this condition. I want to go heal myself. That was never my
Mhm.
philosophy because I was ingrained for 38 years in this medical system that I was sick, disabled, taking all this medicine. I had no indication, and you really don't see much out there. You see these literally thousands upon hundreds of thousands of articles about all these conditions and how they're incurable.
Mhm.
So it was never a place like that. I could heal myself. And that's what I ask people today is just because someone else is telling you that you're incurable, why is that your truth? So that's one of the people
Mhm.
questions I asked today. Because it was never coming from this deeper essence, but I never didn't even know this deeper essence within me that animates the body, the life force, the consciousness. But what
Mhm.
really shifted for me, because I was dealing with multiple sclerosis. So I was a couch potato. I was
Mhm.
very fatigued, part of the MS, multiple sclerosis. You get a lot of fatigue, your energy is really in short supply. So I was a couch potato. I would go to work and go home and collapse on the couch, and that was my life. And one of the things I used to watch was, you know, ghost hunting shows. But I didn't know if it was
Mhm.
real or fake because it's TV. So I thought this is interesting. What's with these ghosts and things like this? So I saw a tweet from a ghost hunter saying, "Hey, we're having this event in Philadelphia." It's like, oh, that's
Mhm.
pretty close. I can go to that.
Mhm.
But that was an adventure getting there. But I did my research and I went there and I had an experience that I just could not explain that I needed to have to shift me out of my current reality that there's something more than I can see with my eyes. But so I was on this ghost hunt and I was sitting on this bench and I felt somebody sitting right next to me here on my left that I could not see that was physically not there, but I literally felt somebody sat there. Then when they sat there, I just felt this overwhelming sense of dread that came over me because
Mhm.
this area where I was in Philadelphia and Fort Mifflin was where they housed the Civil War prisoners. So this is potentially a Civil War prisoner that sat next to me that I couldn't see. So that was really interesting to me. So, okay, so there's somebody sitting next to me. For most people, there's a, well, that was entertaining. That so ghosts are real, and they would have left it at that. But I was curious, what did I experience? So I went down this rabbit hole. What did I experience? But I was dealing with the multiple sclerosis, the migraines, everything. So I couldn't read for more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time before I would get a headache and all these issues. And my vision was very good with the MS. So I was slowly reading a book, but I figured, who talks to the ghosts, the spirits? Oh, mediums. Let me go read a book from a medium. So I reading this book from a medium, and eventually they talk about meditation and of how they use meditation to get into your space, to talk to these entities. So what they talk about though with meditation, they start listing the benefits of meditation and how to meditate. Was reading the benefits of meditation. I forget what they all were, but one of them was inner peace. I'm like, that's it. I need meditation for inner peace because I was completely stressed out, completely overwhelmed with life. I needed some inner peace. So who doesn't need some inner peace today in this
So
society
true.
that we live in? So this is my quest. Okay, so I'm going to meditate and I'm going to have inner peace. So, like I said, there was really no instructions with this. It was more like sit quietly in a comfortable spot and relax. That was basically the essential part of it, which was perfect because you told my bipolar OCD brain the rules of meditation, sitting properly, hands breathing. I'd be like, am I doing this right? I would have never escaped the mind. I've been so focused and preoccupied with the rules. I would have never gotten out of the brain. But what I realized, so I was sitting there for 5 minutes a day. So my practice is very simple, 5 minutes a day. But what I was thinking, I was under the impression that meditation means you stop thinking.
Mhm.
So I was sitting there relaxing, and there goes the mind. And I was like,
Mhm.
stop thinking. There goes the mind. Stop thinking. So after about 4 or 5 days of this, I was like, wait a second, wait a second. I can see my thoughts, so I can see that I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. This
Mhm.
was a profound realization for me that I have thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts. My psychiatrist in my 20s never once said to me, why are you taking your thoughts as truth?
Mhm.
He never asked me that question. And I don't think anybody asks us a question. Why are you taking your beliefs, your stories, your thoughts as your truth? It's usually something you picked up along the way. So then I was sitting with this question now, okay, I have thoughts. If I'm not my thoughts, then who am I? Because before I was completely identified with my thoughts. I am bipolar. I have multiple sclerosis. I have all these ailments. I was my identity. So when
Mhm.
I saw that, okay, I'm not my identity, not my thoughts. So who am I? So I was sitting with that question now in meditation. But my meditation practice then changed. When I was in thoughts now, I would no longer say stop thinking. I'll be coming back to my feet, my hands, my breath, but usually it was my feet. And I didn't realize what I was doing at that time. I was learning to be present to this moment. Because
Mhm.
before I was always lost in thoughts, but now I was learning to be present. So then I was sitting there this question. Then one day after meditation, I was just sitting there and I just heard a voice say, perfect spirit. I'm like, that's it. My spirit is perfect. It's simply the body and mind that are damaged. Then I just felt this deep, deep sense of peace come over me and a sense that all is well and all sense of fear about my health was simply gone. I knew all my health challenges were over that moment when I heard that voice say perfect spirit. It was
Mhm.
almost that we can call it either your divine voice, intuitive voice. It doesn't really matter, but it's just a reminder that we're all spirit, soul, consciousness, whatever that resonates for you. So, what happened at that point was I no longer took my mind as the source of truth. So, this whisper, this intuition would say, do this, do this, do this. And I just followed and trusted that voice. So one time it was like, I need to do yoga. I just had the sense it was time to go do yoga. So the mind was always protesting. You don't have flexibility. Your balance is terrible. You can't do yoga. I ignored that voice and I signed up for yoga. So I was doing yoga like 2 or 3 times a week. Then 6 months after doing yoga, no more cane. I
Mhm.
had the insights too to wean off the medication. Like I don't recommend this for anyone, but I wasn't working with my doctors at all. I pretty
Mhm.
much cut my doctors off at that
Wow.
point. and
Mm-hmm.
just was just following this intuitive voice. But out of curiosity, I made one last appointment with the neurologist
Mm-hmm.
at the very end of my healing. I wanted to see what my neurologist thought about it. So I was going through my, to now, I wasn't really still on a healing journey. To me, I was not on a healing journey. Because when I
Mm-hmm.
think of healing journey, you're trying to figure it out, you're trying to work out the next steps. I didn't have any of that. I said, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? And I just followed the plan. The spirit has the plan. The mind is guessing the plan. So I never had a plan. So I just followed this voice. And with about 14 to 15 months after hearing that voice, no more medicine, no cane, no signs of anything. It was all done, all over with. So I had
Wow.
that last neurologist appointment. At this time, I was seeing 7 doctors on a frequent basis, besides the 13 medications. I had a
Mm-hmm.
really large medical team because I thought they were my answer, but they weren't.
Yeah.
I was getting sicker and sicker and a
Mm-hmm.
decline. So I saw my last neurologist. So I got everything done before I saw him. Got my blood work, got scans, got everything. He was completely puzzled. He's like, well, your scans are clean, your blood work is perfect. Doing a physical exam, all I see is a non-specific hand tremor that everyone has. Then he
Mm-hmm.
proceeded to, well, his last appointment for the day. So he proceeded to question me for 45 minutes, trying to quantify what I did. And he had
Wow.
no answers. It didn't line up to his training.
Oh my gosh. There's so much that you said. I just want to unpack because first of all, just going back to that the fact that your thoughts are not your truth. Like that for me was such a an eye-opening experience in my own life of realizing like I thought they were my truth for years too and and plagued me. And so having that realization and coming to that conclusion that your thoughts are not your truth and that being like the gateway towards more things opening up for you is like so profound. I hope for anyone who's listening to this that you're when you're if you're ruminating, your thoughts are going over and over and over again, to be able to remove yourself and just give yourself some separation to realize like that is not who you are, that you are, as you describe, perfect, a perfect spirit. And I love that. And
Yeah.
like in your as you started to go through your journey, I know you said that you just what's the next step? What's the next step? Can you share a few of the things that you did along the way? I know you mentioned yoga, meditation. What are some other things that you were practicing?
Yeah. It was just really just listening to that voice was like, I would tell things like drink more water, less meat.
Mhm.
You know, it's just giving
Yeah.
these, 'cause that's the way spirit works. It's like do this, do that with no rhyme, reason, justification, like drink
Mhm.
water. And the mind will say drink water to keep yourself hydrated, do yoga to increase flexibility,
Mhm.
like all these mental stories. And it was just that voice of do this, do that. And most of the time it was, sitting in meditation. If I thought I needed more time in meditation, it'd be really interesting how spirit would
Mhm.
respond if I needed to sit longer in meditation. Like if I did my normal 5 minute, 10 minute practice, whatever I was doing, but something still wasn't needed to be cleared or something needed to be processed, whatever it was, like none of my electronics would work. It was really an odd experience. Like, all right, I did my meditation. I guess I'm done for the day. So if I try to turn the TV on, just go right off.
Oh my gosh.
So it'd be
Wow.
like, all right, so I need to sit more. Something needs to be clear, something needs to be
Yeah.
processed because, it was 38 years of the
Mhm.
PTSD from the 6-year-old to all this
Mhm.
other stuff, that all this emotional baggage that had to be
Mhm.
cleared out that I pick out over time. And by just being present will naturally clear this stuff. So I would just sit there, all right, I can't put the TV on, so that means I need to sit some more and be
Mhm.
quiet and
Yeah.
relax and process. Or maybe it was a time where sometimes I'll be just instead of meditation, be like, oh, I need to journal. I would just start
Mhm.
writing out some thoughts and some ideas and sometimes my steps would come through the journaling writing too of what needs to be done. And journaling was also very healthy to get those thoughts onto paper and then you can like remove it, you can get it out. It was just little things like that were happening to me that was really wild.
Mhm.
And one of the things I talk about too, like one time I was guided to this meditation, a chakra dhyana meditation. Like I didn't have a spiritual teacher. I just said, I feel like I need to do a different type of meditation. I was looking at YouTube and like, oh, I need to do this one. And I
Hmm.
just did this one meditation called the Chakra Dhyana meditation. No ideas what chakras are or any of that. I'm not, I didn't read any spiritual books or anything. I didn't have a spiritual teacher, nothing. I was
Hmm.
just trusting this inner voice. So it's like, I need to do this meditation. Well, I was doing this meditation and I had a full Kundalini awakening after a few days of doing this because it was really getting all my chakras on online. Had no idea what that was. I just trusted
Hmm.
this voice, and that was a wild experience. That's where somebody else to talk to would have been helpful because I was going through a full Kundalini awakening. It was felt like it was constantly being in a lightning storm, constantly being shocked with electric. But I just knew like this is what the body needs to rewire. It's been so damaged from all these ailments, from the accident to the multiple sclerosis. I know this is just the body rewiring, but man, is this a challenge or what? Like right now,
Hmm.
this time of year in January, when I was going through this Kundalini awakening, yeah, that was January 2011. I was going through that
Hmm.
process. I'll be sitting in the house pouring sweat. It's like
Wow.
just extreme heat running through me.
Mhm.
And it was just
Yeah.
really an intense experience. But it doesn't mean that everyone needs to go through this experience. That's why I really
Mhm.
teach people that you live in your body. It's ultimately, you need to find your way, your recipe. So that's what
Mhm.
I try to do in my podcast. That's why I had you on there because everyone has a different journey on how they go beyond their thoughts.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
have all these different ways, and I want people to listen to the podcast and say, oh, this will work for me, this will work for me, and pick and choose those little pieces to help you on your journey. Because I always
Mhm.
tell people there's not one size fits all. This is my path. Kelly has a different path. You're
Mhm.
going to have a different path. So find
Mhm.
your path, find your way. And it's about that place of discovery. So just realize that deeper essence within you will
Mhm.
bring those things to you that you need. Just pay attention and
Yeah.
not ignore it. The mind will say, no, there's no way I could do that. That's
Mhm.
impossible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I so appreciate what you just said because it is that exposure, get exposed to a lot of different things, but then the power comes in the discernment and knowing, okay, this is aligned with me and this authentically feels right for me. And it's amazing that you had that guiding voice within you and you learned to trust that voice and continue on the path that was right for you. And I want to go back to that because for someone who maybe ruminates and has all those negative voices, how did you learn to differentiate those voices from your mind versus the guiding voice that was helping you along this journey?
Yeah, we have to realize that we all have this guiding voice. We
Hmm.
are spirit, but we can't hear that constant whisper because the mind is screaming. The inner voice is whispering. The mind voice is literally screaming at you to do this, to do
Yeah.
that. Well, that's why I really give the example, like when I heard that voice versus, a mental voice. A mental voice will give justification,
Hmm.
reasons to do something. Spirit has no doesn't play those games. It just says,
Hmm.
do this, do this. It's like this gut hunch, this gut reaction, like, oh, I need to go do this. I don't know why, but I just feel like I need to do this, or this gut reaction, I need to go do this. And it's just that instinct of with no reason, doesn't make any sense. Why am I going this way? Home is quicker going this way, but I need to go off to take the side road. And later you hear about some big accident or something on that other highway. But if we trust our instincts, it will guide, it will give no reason, justification for it. So that's one of the hardest things to learn is that skill of discernment. It is the mind can get very tricky. You can really think this is your spirit giving you insights, but it's the mind trying to fool you. But there's just a certain quality for it. Like the mind is more urgent. Like you really must do this now. And spirit is like very calmly, do this, do
Hmm.
that. And
Yeah.
it's just very calming, very reassuring that the mind's more like urgent. We must do this now.
Yes. Yeah. And when I was first started like listening to my own inner voice, I was like, I had a hard time differentiating. And now it becomes much more clear. I'm like, okay, that's definitely my mind because it's like making me feel a certain way. I'm getting like jittery, and like, I'm like, okay, that's just the mind. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing your insight in that because again, hearing this, I felt like I needed to hear it over and over again of like, okay, yeah, that is that guiding voice versus that is my mind. And it's like the more you practice and the more you trust what you're hearing from that calm guiding voice, it definitely makes a huge difference in everything. So,
Yeah, and what was coming to me as well is too is the mind will say, "Well, here's the next 5 steps. Here's all
yeah,
the steps you need to do.
yeah,
Here's the plan." Spirit
hmm,
is one step at a time. Here's the
yeah,
step. Look at the next step when this one is done.
yeah, yep, absolutely. Not overloading you or overwhelming you with anything. It's just the next, yeah, it's like having a flashlight. You go up the next step. Okay. And then here we go, the next one. You don't have to see the whole staircase in front of you.
And spirit might give you a step, and if you don't work on that step, you may not get another step. It might
Yeah.
just say, "You didn't act on this first one, so we're just
Mm-hmm.
going to stay here till you
Yeah.
complete that one."
Right. Take some action. Absolutely. When in your healing and going from where you were to, having MS and, all the other things you were experiencing to where you are today, were there any, can you talk about some of the challenges? Because I imagine there's also were a lot of challenges in that too. Can you talk about how you navigated that?
Yeah, because, like I said, this was really just about me trying to go through this process.
Hmm.
But some of these medicines were very addictive to the body. I
Hmm.
just, like this one medicine for, it was Klonopin for my anxiety. The way it works, it's like a barbiturate. The body gets very addicted to it. So even though I was taking a really tiny dose of it, I actually had to reach out to my rheumatologist, not the one
Hmm.
who prescribed it to me, because this one was more open to the way I was doing my journey. Because I saw him once while I was on this journey, but eventually I stopped seeing him too. But I saw him that once because he was more open-minded to
Hmm.
a life without medicine. He was more like that. So I was talking to him about this medicine's like, "Oh, you're taking this dose. So take even half of that every other day, then every third day, then every fourth day." He was teaching me how to get off this very addictive substance. So it was challenges like that. Like I needed some guidance and tips on. Then also one of the other challenges that I faced where my mind got really strong and demanding when it was time to get off my daily injectable for multiple sclerosis, because it was
Hmm.
very difficult to get onto that. Then I was like, do I really want to get off this MS medicine? It really took a lot to get onto this, but I wasn't looking at it from another perspective as well as like, what has this done for me?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it was really, sometimes I was taking a lot of medicine. It was like, well, what was that really doing for me? How was that
Hmm.
really helping? So when it
Hmm.
was this MS medication, I was taking it for, 6 years. And there's this really rare side effects that comes with this medicine that I never had. It's about like rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, tightness in the chest. Like that's kind of symptoms you get from this. But when it was time to get off the MS medication, because I was going through this routine of weaning off my medicine, when it was time to go through this, and I was pausing, like, do I really want to go off this MS medicine? So I gave myself the injection, had that side effect that day. I was
Hmm.
like, oh, that's odd. So
Hmm.
the next day, I tried it one more time and I got the side effect again. For me to get a side effect twice in a row, it's like, all right, this is done.
Hmm.
Don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
And
And
I've
you had
been
never had it previously, you said?
right. Yeah, two
Wow.
days in a row of having
Yeah.
the side effect and I never had it again. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
now it's been 13 plus years with absolutely no medicine.
Wow. And it's like I love this because it's for anyone who maybe feels like they have something that they feel like, oh, I'll never be able to live without this. Like this is such an empowering story to hear of like it is possible and it is possible to heal from even some of these diseases that you think are incurable. And so I am so grateful for you sharing your journey and your story and how you lived with that to where you are today.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I have my own process that I lead people through. I get into a very deep
Mhm.
space. It's almost like hypnotherapy, but not quite. So I was asking this person with very advanced Parkinson's, who's really
Mhm.
having a lot of issues. Like I'm into the space. I'm like, I know you have all these stories outside of you that this is a lifelong condition that is incurable.
Mhm.
Has your spirit ever told you that this is incurable? And he answered no.
Mm. Wow.
Because it's also from A Course in Miracles. It says there's no degree of difficulties in miracles.
Mhm.
It's like to realize that consciousness within us has created the universes, everything that we see around us. So nothing is impossible to spirit. if we can really fully trust that voice and really dive into that place, because you're going to get lots of challenges, you're going to get obstacles, because that's life. If this was a simple process, everyone will do it, but you're going to drag up a lot of stuff when you're healing. Sometimes I would need to sit in meditation more because things needed to be processed, journaled, whatever it is. Because when you start meditating and start getting into these processes, all the stuff that's been buried and suppressed comes to the surface.
Mhm.
So it's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff to process. It does get flushed out, but it's not a smooth ride.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate saying that because again, like, everything sounds amazing and it is, and the end result is amazing, but it's not always just like butterflies and sunshine through the process of that, especially when you're excavating some emotions that have maybe been shoved down for a long time. And what were some of those experiences, if you don't mind sharing, like as you started to pull up some of these emotions and process some of them, like what was your body's response, your mind's response? Like
Yeah,
how
like
did that
dealing
show up?
Yeah, like dealing with the PTSD from age 6, that was never
Mhm.
addressed. So when I was really facing that issue, a lot of tears would come, a lot of crying and feeling this helpless sensation. So a lot of the stuff was coming to the surface that was never addressed. Even
Mhm.
when, seeing the psychiatrist for almost 20 years, he never processed any of that. It was always like, oh, here's this medication, here's this medication. It was never, sometimes we try to reframe thoughts, but I always saw that as, now I can see that today is just chasing thoughts with more thoughts. It's not
Mhm.
unwinding those thoughts and really into the deeper essence that I want people to
Mhm.
see that there's something beyond all these thoughts, all these opinions, all these stories. We need to
Mhm.
go beyond all of that and just to realize we are consciousness, we are spirit, and
Mhm.
this body is temporary.
Mhm.
I had a toddler body at once in my life, a teenager body. I don't have them anymore because that's not me.
Mhm.
The body is constantly changing, and we are that thing that doesn't change.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're just a soul living in the body for now. And that's, yeah, it's something that I've learned in the last few years and something that's been so profound to realize this, that like how temporary our existence is here in this body and to realize that like this is just housing us for now.
Yeah,
And
it's
yeah, I don't know if you're familiar. Have you ever heard about Anita Morjani? You ever heard of her
yeah,
story? Yeah, because what you're sharing reminds me so much of what her story was. And for anyone who hasn't heard, but she had stage 4 cancer and she had a near-death experience. Literally, kind of removed herself. Well, she didn't remove it. Her spirit got removed from her body. She could see herself, and they were going to pronounce her as dead, and she came back into her body and ended up healing from stage 4 cancer, which they told her was incurable. And so very similar, that spirit, that soul led journey of like you're meant for more, and maybe that that's the purpose of like you sharing your story of like how you can help others realize the power that they have within themselves.
Yeah, it's just really powerful when we get the mind out of the way. I always call it the mental interference. When we get that out of
Mhm.
the way and allow spirit to take over, because basically we've been taught wrong how to use the mind, that we're taught to figure things out and plan things out. And it's like, no, your spirit knows the way. There's nothing to figure out. Just get
Mhm.
quiet and take action and just take action on that voice because that voice will give you the steps, but if you don't take action, nothing happens.
100. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not just sitting back and waiting for life to immediately, just magically change. It is all about that action, but that guided action, which becomes so much more empowering and not that like frantic scramble that so many of us get into when we're relying just on the mind.
Right. And to have these tools and processes in place before the crisis hits, because we're in the midst of crisis like I had, is a lot more challenging to get yourself out of that place because you have all these stories that need to be worked through. So I always tell people before the crisis hits, especially if you're young, develop that meditation practice, develop a journaling practice, do yoga, do something to get you in touch with that greater essence because life is full of challenges and traumas and stress. So if you have a tool in place before that hits, you'll adjust to it a lot quicker and move through it a lot
Mhm.
quicker.
Absolutely. Yeah. And do you mind sharing some of your daily practices now? Like, what does your routine look like and how you harbor that connection?
Well, yeah, because my practice is very, very simple. I
Mm-hmm.
don't, because I could sit in hours in meditation, but then I realize like I'm here for the human experience. I don't need
Mm-hmm.
to sit in meditation for hours. So what
Mm-hmm.
I call it is a daily mental shower. Like we
Mm-hmm.
take a physical shower to get rid of the debris, but are we doing anything, get rid of the stress of the day, the beliefs, the things that came up during the day. So we need to wash away that as well. So I call my little practice like a daily mental shower. And that's just learning to be present. Mind thinking, where are my feet? Mind
Mm-hmm.
thinking, where are my feet? It's just really about a presence practice. So I
Mm-hmm.
do that for 5, 10 minutes a day, and that's pretty much it, is just and just trying to be present to the moment to the best of my ability. And that's really the key, is learning to be present, that Eckhart Tolle talks about, that I had no clue about till I read about after my healing, that I was doing what he teaches, being here in
Mm-hmm.
this moment, to realize we're either in the thoughts, the story, or we're here, we're aware that we're sitting, we're listening, our feet on the floor. And when you're present, you're naturally at peace, because we're either in the thoughts or we're present. And the more you're present, the more gaps you put in the thought stream. The more gaps, the more inner peace that remains. So you're not so caught up in the drama. So my practice is very simple, that
Mm-hmm.
before I was journaling and things of that nature, I'll still write a little bit, but most of the time it's just sitting quietly for a couple minutes a day. It's nothing complicated. I don't like complicated processes, because my
Yeah.
process was never complicated. And I'm, like I said, I'm so fortunate I didn't have a spiritual teacher teaching me how to do meditation. My
Mm-hmm.
OCD brain would have hooked onto that and being obsessed with the rules of meditation. And it's really just learning to relax. And there's no rules to relaxation. Relax into the present.
Yeah, absolutely. And for someone who's listening right now and like maybe they're in a place where they have never done meditation, they feel like they are very separate from everyone, they feel very bogged down, overwhelmed, their mind is just running rampant and they feel like they just never like even silencing their mind or being present feels like such a foreign concept. Where could that person just start? Like what would be a starting point for them to just get their feet wet and start moving in towards that direction?
You have to realize everything can be a practice. So if
Hmm.
you have artwork around your house, go look at the artwork, go study the strokes, and just really observe the painting. That alone will bring you into the present moment, because you're
Hmm.
either in the mind or aware of this moment. So you just want to start to engage this environment. Like, where are you sitting right now? Where are your feet? Just that little process puts a gap in the thought stream. All we're trying to do is put gaps in the thought stream. So it's really about getting yourself into this moment. It reminds me of a story. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Peaceful Warrior.
No, I'm not familiar with
Well,
it.
well, basically, with Peaceful Warrior, there's Nick Nolte's playing a Buddha type character, and I forget the kid from Karate Kid is playing his student. So they're
Mhm.
walking along this path, and this student is telling about all the problems of the day and all these issues. And the Buddha character just pushes him into the water on the side of the path, just pushes him in the water. He's like, "Why'd you do that?" "Well, you're back in this moment, aren't you?"
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I
So
have not seen that, but that's yeah.
you got to do whatever you can to bring
Yeah.
yourself back into this moment, whether it's like today, you could just walk out into the cold air. You're not going to be
Hmm.
your thoughts anymore. You're going to be like, "Wow, I'm cold."
It's
And
true.
it's, or you grab an ice cube, you do something that you can bring yourself into this moment. And another story I had with that too, my old girlfriend, we were going to her doctor's appointment, and she was starting to have a panic attack. She was starting to future guess what was going to happen to doctors. So without, I wasn't really, I was just asking her questions about like what was going on. "Oh, do you like, what is she like? What is she wearing? What's on her coat over there?" I was just asking her questions about the environment, and
Hmm.
she was no longer in her thoughts. I was bringing her back here without telling her what I was doing. I was just asking her questions like, "Oh, do you see that
Hmm.
jacket over there? What do you think of that hairstyle?"
Yeah.
And
Yep.
just these little questions. It doesn't have to be complicated
Mhm.
to realize the mind is rarely here. Like if you're
Mhm.
standing in line, notice around you. And if you ever drove someplace you don't know how you got there, it's because the subconscious drove and you were lost in thoughts. So when you're
Mhm.
driving, feel your hands on the steering wheel.
Mhm.
Notice the color of the cars around you. Just notice what's happening around you. And it's just one of these practices of making it simple. How can you make it simple? Let go of all these complexities. Like
Hmm.
it can be so simple just to be here, and if it doesn't work, find something that really snap you into it. Whether it's a cold shower. If you're really in a lot of drama, really stressed, take a cold shower. If it's not
Hmm.
cold outside, something
Yeah.
to really get you, like you
Hmm.
said, you're either aware or you're lost. You can't be two
Hmm.
places at once.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so nice to hear like that simplicity and like how you can incorporate in your day because I think so many of us get feeling like we have to transform our whole life or like do this big long practice to make a difference. And especially if you're, a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are those like go-getters type A and they're like, that can't be enough. That's not going to do anything. But so it's nice and reassuring to hear that just these little things do make all the difference and pulling you back into that present moment. And that really is the magic of it.
Yeah, for those go-getters to realize when you're lost in your mind, you're actually weaker. If you're actually in this moment, you're aligned to who you are, and you actually have more strength, more power. And you're gonna have a more of a knowing, because most of the time mind has you distracted doing things that are not important. So if you learn
Mhm.
to be present, say, okay, what's the next action? What's the next thing I work on? Because I'm sure you have like 20 projects in front of you and you're trying to tackle all of them. You put the 20 out in
Mhm.
front of you, you just say, which one feels like it needs to be done first? Yeah.
Mhm.
And you go down that path as opposed to being distracted. Because we're here, we're strong. When we're in thoughts, we're weak. And
Mhm.
that and you're in your thoughts that will weakens your immune system because you're
Mhm.
not here. You're creating stress, you're creating worry, you're creating anxiety, creating all those stress hormones in the body. We just want to relax. It's really
Mhm.
about doing less to achieve more.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like I couldn't agree more. And it's like again, practicing that and trusting that process and trusting yourself. It is, I mean, I know I've been that person, like there's 20 projects and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then you get paralyzed and you end up doing like nothing or you do them so surfacey that nothing really gets done. But yeah, like being able to pull your energy into what is most aligned with yourself really makes all the difference. And so I appreciate you sharing that. It's just like something else that is relatable and how we can start to really honor ourselves and not feel like we are just scrambling, because it's again that place of are we moving in fear or are we moving in love for ourselves? And when we're trying to take care of everything and feel like whatever we do is not enough, that's moving in that fear. But if we're present with ourselves, that's when we start to move in love for ourselves.
Right, that's a good point too. If you're in fear, if you don't know what the quiet is, that could be the anxiety, the worry,
Mhm.
the stress, is just feeling, overwhelmed is a good
Mhm.
sign too that you're in the mind too much. Overwhelm and
Mhm.
stress are and all indications that you're overthinking.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed is overthinking because
Hmm.
you're trying to do those 20 projects at one time, and we physically cannot multitask. If you're convinced you can multitask, put a book on your right hand side, read that, and write your name and address on the left side
Hmm.
neatly.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
That is
Yep.
true multitasking. You can
Hmm.
read and write at the same time. That's multitasking. Nobody
Hmm.
can do that.
Yeah. Right. Because you have to be present for each of those. So yes. Yeah. You're only present in one realm, even though we think that we are, capable of doing all these things at once. It's just detrimental to ourselves. And we're just basically burning ourselves out in the process and creating a stress response in ourselves while we're doing that.
Yeah, we actually are burning ourselves out. So, yes, the mind
Hmm.
has the ability to switch very, very quickly between reading and writing,
Hmm.
but it will consume a lot of energy and you will be exhausted and burned out in no time
Yeah.
at all.
Absolutely. Yeah, I forget the statistic, but they were talking about like when, with like screens, like being diverted, having your energy diverted to something, then you have to go back to your task. So if you have your phone and you're working on a project, how much extra time it takes for you to get that done because of it takes you about like 60 seconds to focus again. And I might be off on the numbers, but it just makes it much more difficult because you can't just switch back on and off like we think that we can. It takes a long time to get that focus back. And yet we're so distracted and trying to do everything in life because we're not present.
right? The only thing that can
Yeah.
multitask is really the subconscious. The
Hmm.
conscious mind is a serial processor.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, we could dive so much into that subconscious mind because that is truly what's running everything here, all those belief systems. And you
Right.
you talked about that, the identity of where you believed who you believed you were before, and now who you know who you are
Yeah,
now.
the subconscious really has some programs that you didn't acquire that somebody else programmed into you that you need to
Hmm.
sit quietly and let them rewire those programs to something that's more beneficial. And that's sometimes where we need to sit more, we need to journal more and pull those beliefs out that they're usually generational. You know, your
Hmm.
parents picked it up from someplace and you picked it up and you just carried it on, but you can do
Yeah.
resets by just being present and say, what is the best way forward for me, not based on someone else's information.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so interesting once you start doing the excavation process, what you start uncovering and don't even realize that you have been running on that and without even acknowledging it. So yeah, such a powerful way.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good too when if you're really not able to pull something out because it become really buried and suppressed, then you talk to somebody like myself or Kelly. Somebody can be a witness to say, "Oh, I see all this pattern here. Are you aware of this?"
Yeah. Yeah, having someone hold space for you, like I think all of us need someone to hold space for us. I mean, I go to practitioners myself, like no matter how far along I am, because there's always that benefit of having somebody to be able to see outside of yourself. Like it's like looking at a painting, have your nose up to the painting. It's very hard to see the painting, but if you remove yourself, you can see it much clearer.
Right, especially if it's something that happened a long, long time ago,
Mhm.
you don't have any recall about it, and you
Yeah.
can start to go back in these processes and see where that originated from to
Mhm.
root that out, because there's processes where you can trace that back to an earlier in experience because to realize the mind operates on past prior experiences. It has
Mhm.
to experience something to have that belief system. So you need
Mhm.
to trace that back, say, okay, we can pull that root out here. Because I worked
Mhm.
with somebody in their 30s with relationship issues, and she had no idea why. There was something that happened at age 6 where she felt not good enough, not worthy. And we were able to pull that out and everything was fine.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like all these, a lot of these programming does come from that childhood experience from like up until like age 8 about. And I mean, I don't really remember much of my childhood, but you have these experiences that have formed you in some way from then. So it can be really challenging to dive into that. And it's like that's the most amazing thing, you shared about the meditation, being able to excavate it. Like I've had experiences that pull me back to age 8 and I hadn't thought about something in so long. And it was, I really believe, like helping me work through some of those things that I did experience. So there is so much power to sitting in meditation and sitting quietly and it'll pull you in different areas. It's pretty
Yeah, it might
profound.
not be. Sometimes we have some of these defense mechanisms that prevent us from seeing that. So if you have a
Hmm.
trauma in life, regardless of what age, your mind might just naturally block that off, saying that's too painful to look at. But yet
Yeah.
we need to process that because it's programming, it's creating a limitation
Mhm.
someplace. We need it to bring to the surface, and it's not going to be a pleasant experience, but we can take the power
Mhm.
away from it then.
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%. And I think I was just reading a book too. It's just really resonated me. But it said that the reason we ruminate so much is because we haven't extracted the lesson from something. So if we can extract the lesson, learn from some aspect, or realize the power in what we were experiencing, then we can move past that. But it's when we don't extract that lesson, we continue to think about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, how the mind will pull things forward that we're not even aware of, like, where's this
Mhm.
coming from? Where's
Yeah.
this coming from? We have no idea. We can really get
Mhm.
into that rabbit hole of the past and all these experiences to realize in the quantum, everything is right here, right now. There's ultimately no past, no future. It's all right now. But the
Mhm.
mind loves dragging the past into the present.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could talk all day about the subconscious mind because it literally like dictates your entire life. But I've so appreciated this conversation. And I know there are so many profound lessons and seeds that are going to be planted from this conversation that I'm so grateful for everything you shared. And for someone who's listening, how can they find you and where can they connect with you?
Yeah, that's really about my whole mission is going beyond our head trash. So my beyond head trash is my main site because I want you to go beyond your head trash, all these stories, and step into, the spirit, the soul, the consciousness that All your dreams are waiting for you to arrive home. It's really
Mm-hmm.
stepping back home and achieving those dreams because the mind just creating things, obstacles that don't need to be there. As they
Mm-hmm.
say, it's always you versus you. And we're not even aware of this little you that's stopping all the good that's intended for us. Like your soul is like a magnet trying to pull everything into you. And your
Mm-hmm.
mind, without you knowing it, is saying, no, thank you, no, thank you. We like our current life. It's nice and
Mm-hmm.
comfortable right now.
So true. Oh my gosh, yes. And that's that like resistance we often feel like we know we're meant for more, but yet it's like we keep getting pulled in these cycles. So yeah, so I'll put everything in the show notes. So definitely connect with Baba. And I'm so grateful for everything you shared today. And thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, Kelly, it's been a great honor to share space with you. Thank you.
Yeah, same. It's been amazing. And I'm so grateful again. And, if you really connected with this, share this episode with somebody who could also benefit from these messages. I really believe there's so much power in everything that was shared today. So thank you again for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Rewiring Health. I hope you found our conversation both enlightening and empowering. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Rewiring Health so that you never miss an update. Also, I would love to hear your thoughts. If you could take a moment to rate and review the show, it would mean the world to me and help others discover the power that we all have within us to create change and create the life that we truly, truly desire. Thank you so much for spending your precious time with me and sharing the energy of the show.